I'm Leo Warder for Kit Guru. My review of the new 10-core Intel Core i9-10900K, horrible name, but there we go, is half an hour of closely argued stuff with charts and biases and thermal velocity boost and performance and all sorts of stuff. This review is the Intel Core i5-10600K, and it starts with a question, which is what the bloomin' heck is this processor all about? So to distract you from the potential of Leo being slightly grumpy, I'm going to show you some eye candy. As Cinebench R20 chugs along with 6 cores and 12 threads in operation, you think to yourself, well, we saw all this, didn't we, a couple of years ago with the 8th gen Core i7. And you're exactly correct. This is the problem with Intel's product stack. The 9th gen mucked things up royally. The i9-9900 with its 8 cores and 16 threads was fine. The parts below that, they disabled hyperthreading so as cores and threads were one and the same thing. Ruined things. Previously you used to have your Core i7 which had hyperthreading, your Core i5 didn't, and it sort of made sense, and your Core i3 didn't boost, and then it all got mixed up. And now we've ended up with the brand new 10-core Core i9-10900K, 10 cores, 20 threads is terrific. The i7, 8 core, 16 threads, haven't seen it, sounds good. This 6 core, 12 thread part, what's it all about? The spec is nothing special. It's practically ancient history. But then, of course, this is an old part that's been refreshed. It goes up to a maximum of turbo boost of 4.8 gigahertz. You don't get the turbo boost 3. You don't get thermal velocity boost. It's 6 cores, 12 threads, and it does some stuff. And the really bizarre thing is it's rated at 125 watts, which is just insane for a part of this specification. Oh good, it's finished. Of course that 4.8 gigahertz figure only applies to one core when we're running auto settings out of the box. The all-core turbo speed for this processor is 4.5 gigahertz, and at this point you're probably throwing things at the screen and saying the reason this part exists is because AMD's delivered Ryzen 5, and the answer, of course, that's the reason why this part exists. Intel's been forced to do this because if they didn't deliver a 6-core 12-thread part at a reasonable price, then the Core i5 would be dead in the water, and therefore the stack above it, the i7 and the i9, would make no sense whatsoever. You can't have the i9 10-core at the top of the heap, can you, if you don't have a bottom to the heap? So you have to have the lower end parts. So you have to have your i5, you have to have your i3, so Intel's redefined what an i5 is, and right now it's 6 cores and 12 threads, and this gives us a bit of a problem because I said a reasonable price, and the reasonable price here is apparently £275, which of course puts the Intel smack up against Ryzen 7 3700X. And that's a problem. So let's look through the charts. In 3D Mark, the Core i5 is down the bottom of the stack, and it doesn't matter if you're running at auto settings or if you do a manual overclock to 5 gigahertz. It's down the bottom. Similarly in Firestrike Ultra, and also in TimeSpy, and in 7-Zip, and in Blender. You won't be surprised to learn that in Cinebench Multicore, it's down the bottom. In single-threaded performance, however, it does okay. So if you're doing single-threaded workloads, the Core i5, and indeed most Intel processors, are a part you should consider. Cinebench R20, straight to the bottom. And then we move on to gaming, and this is where things get interesting, because in gaming, the Core i5 looks okay. In Deus Ex, the Core i5 makes a really good showing, both at 4K and also at 1080p. You can't take that one away from Intel. In gaming, the Core i5 does have its place. Far Cry New Dawn, once again, the i5 is not too shoddy. Middle-earth gives your system a workout, but the Core i5 does okay. On the other hand, a synthetic test such as Handbrake, nope, the i5 crashes down the charts. When we look at Cinebench R20 performance per watt, we see that the i5 performs exactly as well as all the other Skylake processors. It just has fewer cores, so there's very little to see there. But naturally, when it comes to power consumption, the i5 is doing very nicely indeed, because of course it's a 6-core processor, and in this group that makes it the baby of the bunch. Other gaming tests also show the i5 in a decent light. And when you look at the temperature figures, the Core i5 runs as cool as a cucumber, even when you overclock it to 5 GHz. But then if you've popped off and watched my Core i9 video and seen how that 10-core monster performs, very cool indeed, you won't be shocked to learn that its baby brother also cools nicely. We've been told by Intel that the K SKUs in the product stack all have this 0.3mm thinning process applied to the silicon. So the Core i5 gets the same treatment as the i7 and the i9, and that seems to help the cooling. And at this stage in the proceedings, you may be confused. I started off being rude about this processor, questioning its very existence, and then I've just demonstrated in those gaming charts that it actually performs perfectly well. You can play games at both 4K and 1080, provided you've got a decent graphics card. So what's my problem? Oh, this is a fair point. Here's the thing. Right now, 6 cores are okay for a gaming PC. At the end of this year, in a very few months, we're going to have the next-gen consoles coming along, and you just know that that's going to mean that 6 cores will go the way that quad cores have already gone. A quad-core PC is perfectly okay, but for gaming it doesn't cut the mustard. So right now your Ryzen 5 3600 or 3600X 6-core does a decent job. Next year, you probably need a Ryzen 7, in which case you pop out that Ryzen 5, pop in the Ryzen 7, and you're good. The thing is, the LGA 1200 socket on this Z490 board is brand new, and yet it only has a life of a year, possibly 2 years. Right now, this Core i5 processor isn't much good for compute jobs. It's okay for gaming. Next year, I'm not sure what it'll be good for. However, I do know that this year you'll be paying a pretty penny, and that's also in inverted commas, for this processor. It's £275, which seems like far too much. The problem is Z490 motherboards are expensive. You're paying, in the case of this MSI Meg Z490 Ace, which looks like a perfectly decent motherboard, about £400, i.e. more than the processor, and yet you're getting PCI Express Gen 3 because Intel does not yet support PCI Express Gen 4. So the motherboard is already a little bit old and crusty in certain respects. The processor, in the case of the Core i5, it's kind of 2 years old already. It's the people who are buying a PC purely on the numbers in the spec. Intel Core i5, 10th gen, 6 cores, 12 threads, up to 4.8 gigahertz. They're going to spend quite a lot of money on a PC that's built around a motherboard like this, with a graphics card that's even a fraction of this Gigabyte RTX 2080 Super. It's going to cost them plenty, and I don't think they're going to have a great gaming experience for very long. And that's really sad. So I'm annoyed at Intel because they brought this part out this year when they could have clearly done it last year instead of knackering the 9th gen product stack. This part, it existed 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Absolutely, it could have been refreshed for last year. Instead, here we are now in 2020, and it's like, what? And they haven't even had the decency to make it really, really, really cheap. Please do not buy this processor. On the other hand, Intel, if you want to send me the Core i7, I'd very happily take a look at that. I really would. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the bell button, subscribe, head over to kitguru.net to read our news and reviews, go to the Teespring store and buy a t-shirt. I'm Neil Woodard for Kit Guru. This is my rather shouty review of Intel's Core i5 10600K.